Well, hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be part one of our table saw cabinetry build, and we are going to focus this episode on this torsion box roll around cart that all the cabinetry for the table saw is going to sit on, including the table saw itself. So what do you say we go ahead and get started? What we're going to focus on today on this episode is the very bottom. This is going to be the part that's going to support the entire cabinet itself. It's going to roll around on 6 casters. Still going to have the color scheme like I want, black and blue, but it's going to support 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cabinets that will still incorporate my router. Now, because the casters I bought are rollerblade style wheels that are polyurethane that are heavy enough to support all of the weight, they don't have the automatic locks that you can press with your feet. So in order to keep the cabinet secure to where it won't move, I'm going to install on the face trim facing down like this, these little Wood River toggle clamps. The way they engage is pushing down into the floor and then they clamp down. And then I can just stick my toe up underneath and pop it back up if I need to move it. We're gonna do a grid work torsion box on the bottom side of the base. And then the base itself is going to be 96 inches by 48 inches. So it's going to be an entire sheet of plywood. So let's just go ahead and get started on it. We're going to start right here at the piece of plywood that's going to be the base. And what I have here is just a riser block that's going to kind of help me figure out how much room to allot for the caster. So the grid work that we're going to have to put in here for the torsion box assembly is going to have to be probably 3.5 inches thick. So we're going to cut up a bunch of strips 3.5 inches wide, as long and however many I need for the cross bracing to do our torsion box. Alright, we have the pieces cut for the torsion box assembly. Like I said, it's going to be 3.5 inches wide. They're going to run the entire length of the plywood, and there's going to be 6 of them. I've got one on one side and one on the other, and that's going to be flush against the side. And I've taken a measurement between the two, and it turns out that was 46 5/8. Using Siri on my smartphone, 46 5/8 divided by 4.
It looks like the answer is approximately 11.6563.
Or 11 and 21/32. That helped me determine the on-center lines divisible by 4, because I've got 4 remaining pieces. So once we make those marks, set these pieces down, then we can take the measurement between those and start cutting up our pieces for the cross members. And the cross members are going to alternate every other row. So I'm going to have 2 here and then 1 in between, 2 here, 1 in between, all the way down the platform.
Now all I'm doing here is just taking a scrap piece of plywood to kind of give me the depth of where I need to pre-drill all the way down the side of my piece of plywood.
Now, because of the burrs that the bit leaves whenever it goes through that really thin veneer, I'm just taking my sanding block with 80 grit paper and just lightly going over each hole, removing the burrs. That way my first board will sit nice and flat.
Now all I'm doing here is just taking a few clamps and clamping the first piece into place after the glue up, just to make sure that it stays put while I screw it down.
One quick thing I should mention, when you're drilling screws into plywood, regardless of whether or not you pre-drilled the top or bottom, however you're looking at it, your screws are going to split this plywood just because of how it's constructed. So learning the hard way in the past, it's always best to drill through your pre-drill into the plywood that you have clamped here to make sure that your screws don't split it out. Okay, what we're going to do next is just make the marks. Now that we've got these attached, we're going to go from the inside of it to 11 5/8 long, and we'll go ahead and run a T-square all the way to the very end so we know where to drill our holes for the next runner. So alright, now what I've done here is I've cut a spacer that's going to be the exact distance between these two. I've already screwed in this one on this end and on the other end. Now, because I can't really clamp this one down like I did these side pieces, I'm just going to use this spacer and go down the length of it, pre-drilling as I go and screwing it in. That way I'll ensure that it's on that line. Now, because I have easy access to this right now with my drill on the other side without having to compete with another runner like this, I'm going to go ahead and screw in my cross members for this particular row. So we're just going to put glue on both sides. Drop it in place. Now just screw them in. Now something I think I ought to go ahead and point out now. When I did the calculations for the distance between each board and I divided by 4, I should have divided by 5. Because when I divided by 4, instead of the 4 remainder boards, what it did is gave me 4 chambers. And I just didn't see that in my head. So we're going to be doing 5 instead of 6 boards altogether. So there's going to be 1 in the center and then 2 on either side of that center one. If you do this alternating fashion like this, you don't run into the problems of being able to get into the next row without having to toenail. Because if you put all these in line, you will definitely have to toenail all of these into place. Okay, now it's time for the caster part. Now, if I was to mount this on that 3/4 inch sheet of plywood, yeah, it would work, but that's not a whole lot of support for that little bitty tiny surface area. So the more weight I put on this, the more it's just gonna crunch down on that area. So instead of mounting it straight to a 3/4 inch sheet of plywood, we're gonna put another 3/4 inch sheet glued down that'll stretch the distance between this cavity, and then we'll mount the wheel on that. And that will help distribute the weight on a bigger surface area load. Now all I've done is I've taken a little bit of glue and some screws and screwed these pieces down and put the caster right on top of that. Now when you mount casters, you want to make doubly sure that you're going to have free spinning motion on 360-degree area of it.
Now it's time to make the edge banding for the cart. All we're doing here is running it through on my miter sled that I had made, and it cuts 45s at a nice angle to make perfect edge banding.
Because this piece that goes along the length of the cart is too long for me to put up on that jig, it hits my ceiling. So we're just going to do them right here on the miter box. Now we're just going to trim these down about 1 inch, make them 4 1/4 inches wide. That'll leave an inch clearance from the floor to the very bottom of this particular cart. So it's going to look like it's kind of floating, which is going to look pretty awesome if you ask me. Alright, well that concludes this episode of Rockin' H Woodshop. Be sure and tune in next week when we start on the cabinetry build that will go on top of this cart. If this project interests you, be sure and like it, and you can check out my page on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, all that stuff. Just Google me, you'll be able to find me anywhere. And remember, I have new woodworking videos every Monday, so I'll catch you guys next week.